This is the lecture presentation for Unit 14, Principles of Management, Newberry College, Fall 2021. I'm Professor Marsh. In Unit 14, we have four learning objectives, and this is the last chapter in both editions of the textbook, so this is it. The first is the nature and importance of control. Then we'll look at 3 steps in the control process. Types of control organizations and managers use, and contemporary issues in control. Now, control is the fourth major task of managers, and this is the only chapter that deals with control. So we better spend some time on this and get it right. So let's look at control and how that's defined as a management function that involves monitoring activities to ensure that they're being accomplished as planned and correcting any significant deviations. And the importance of control is in planning activities, certainly in planning and making sure that as you plan for your goals that you control the activities. Secondly is in empowering employees, in other words, managing by results, giving the employees a direction, and then using control and monitoring to understand how they're meeting those goals, and then protecting the workplace. So we want to make sure that the workplace is a safe place for our employees and our customers, and that it is secure in the sense of both physical safety and also data security. And also that important legal regulations and laws and standards are not being violated. It's important to have control to understand what's going on and whether the goals are being achieved. Like the myth that was debunked in the opening of the chapter in the book that no turnover could mean that there's happy and productive employees in the organization. But it could also mean that you have complacent employees and out-of-touch management. So you need control processes to ascertain and to measure what's actually going on. And you can see the control process well in figure 14.2. I don't always like the flow charts and the charts in the book. Sometimes they're too complicated, but if you work your way through figure 14.2, you'll see it's a good, simple, closed system flow chart that gives you effective guidance on handling the control process. So there are 3 steps in the control process. One is to measure actual performance and the development of measurement techniques and what is sometimes referred to by the buzzword, but actual term, metrics. Determining metrics for performance is an important skill to learn and is important to the control of a business organization. And then comparing actual performance against a standard. So what was your budget? What were your goals? How did we actually do compared to what we planned to do? And then taking managerial action to correct deviations or to address inadequate or perhaps unrealistic standards. Or the third alternative is to choose to do nothing if within an acceptable tolerance. So it doesn't, the measurement doesn't have to be just about dollars. I mean, it can be. It could be sales, profits, cost, things of that nature, but it could also be standards of customer service, like getting 100% of customers to give you a good review, or to greeting 100% of your customers with a smile, or a handshake, or some other appropriate greeting as under the corporate culture and the local culture. Like Ritz-Carlton or Chick-fil-A, responding to every thank you with "It's my pleasure." It may be difficult to develop a standard. It may be difficult to develop a metric. It could take a survey of customer perceptions of quality or service or value in order to develop the appropriate standards. And certainly a survey of customer perception of quality or service is going to play some role in your final exam and final written assignment. So please be aware of that. Also note the concept of competitive benchmarking, where you establish a standard based on what you perceive to be the best competitors out in the market and trying to meet or exceed their performance. It doesn't have to necessarily be a fixed standard. It could be a variable standard. It could be within an acceptable tolerance. Take a look at the example in 14-3. So figure 14-3 shows performance that's measured, and the results vary, but they vary within an acceptable range of variation. And so you might take little tweaks as opposed to bold changes to improve the performance within that acceptable range. So that can be an important tool for management as well. But note that one of the possibilities, if you find a deviation from your standards in your measurement process, one of the things you can do is you can take managerial action to correct it, or perhaps you might re-examine those standards and find that the standards were unrealistic, and that perhaps you did better by having the standards. You're shooting for a goal, but if you didn't get there, maybe an acceptable result is, well, we don't have to change things because we did have performance better than it was before we set the standard. It just might take us a little more time to get there. And so you don't necessarily have to react or overreact to deviations. Now, looking at the types of controls that organizations and managers use, when does control take place? Is it feed-forward control, where you try to prevent problems by design? So, for example, the book gives you the example of the McDonald's fries that have to taste the same in New York City as they taste in Hong Kong. Concurrent control, where you monitor and control the activities of the employees in real time with direct supervision. You can have coaching, or you can have cheerleading, or you can have correcting, but in any event, you're doing it as the process is taking place. Or you can have feedback control, which is probably the most typical system that's used. If design doesn't work, you correct the problem after it occurs. What gets controlled? So you can have control of finances, ratio analysis and budget analysis. How profitable are we compared to the costs of production? So what are the ratios of our financial soundness? Do we have enough cash in the bank compared to our total assets? Do we have too much debt? Do we have enough cash to get us through the next payroll cycle? How are we doing compared to our budget? How does that stack up? So we budgeted to have certain results. Where are the deviations? Are they in sales? Are they in costs? Is it overhead? Is it cost of production? Those sorts of things. Information needs to be controlled. You have to get the right information at the right time for the managers and also for the employees so that they can do their work. And the book notes the creation of an MIS, or Management Information System. So getting the right information to management at the correct time is the goal of that. Then you can have data security systems. Those are important. So at our law firm, we have an IT consultant who comes in and makes sure that our individual devices are appropriately secure, and that the office server that we have and backup systems are operating properly, so that we don't have anyone getting into our data who's not authorized, and also that our data is preserved in the event of a fire or some other catastrophe, that we have a backup system. Employee performance can be controlled. And again, that might be something that you become faced with as you do your final project. Employee performance, if you remember the prior unit on employee discipline to correct problems, there are a lot of different steps that management can take short of firing to control employee performance. It can involve training, reassignment, perhaps a better matching of employee skills to jobs, or perhaps enhancing their, giving them some tools to perform better. And then you can also have a balanced scorecard, developing goals and measuring performance. And that balanced scorecard will typically include financial, customer, internal processes, and people, innovation, and growth aspects to the balanced scorecard. Now, what are the contemporary issues in control? And one of the things that is very important for managers today are that you have accurate communication and respect for different cultures. Now, this could be, in terms of accurate communication, it could be overcoming language differences. It could be avoiding the use of jargon, which might not be familiar across cultures. Also, it could be understanding that different cultures might look at certain types of activities or practices differently, and being respectful for those, and perhaps locating anything that might be considered controversial in one of the cultures where you operate, locating those activities somewhere else where they wouldn't be considered offensive or controversial. Work computers and personal use. Just understand that the employer owns the work computers and perhaps other handheld devices, and the employee uses them. And so these raise issues of control, privacy, respect for employees' privacy, and also ethical issues for both the employer and the employee. That's a big issue nowadays, and certainly we have seen a lot of people who've been very disappointed to find out that there is a administrator who works for the boss who has access to everything they put online or on their computer. Employee theft. We have issues about using work devices at home. If that's what we're doing, during COVID to protect, or to accomplish our goals at work, versus the use of business property at home to fund employee side gigs. And take a look at Exhibit 14-7 about issues and techniques to control employee theft. That can be a big issue in some businesses, not just retail, but in many office environments, and something that certainly I've seen in my practice in the past. We used to have a practice at our law firm, not the one that I'm currently at, but a prior firm, in which when we would draft a trust, an irrevocable trust for a client, like a life insurance trust or something that would, hold a life insurance policy, there was a standard in the law that you had to have at least some corpus. There had to be some property other than just an unfunded life insurance policy as an asset of the trust. In order to create a valid trust, it has to have some property. And so we would typically get a $5 bill or a $10 bill from the client and staple it to the funding page of the trust that would show on Exhibit A to the trust that we'd actually put $5 or $10 into the trust. And then we would store those in an appropriate place in our office for our clients. And what we found out is that there was an employee who needed some lunch money. And so those $5 and $10 bills that were stored in the client's trust that were long forgotten about had not been forgotten about by this particular employee who would borrow one occasionally, to get a sandwich at lunch. So anyhow, that situation was remedied with an appropriate restoration of those $5 bills or $10 bills. And then we decided to adopt a practice of actually just attaching a photocopy of a $10 bill, showing that the trustee was holding $10 in cash as the corpus of the trust. And that was a process improvement that eliminated that issue without, any of the, negative connotations that having somebody stealing from clients might have. So in any event, and then last contemporary issue was workplace violence, and that's discussed in your book and also in Exhibit 14-8. And the issues, involve preventing workplace violence, responding and monitoring, and then, correcting and reporting and those sorts of things. So in any event, understand that as far as the cultural differences go, this is an important topic, and again, a topic which you may see again shortly with your final exam. But if you have a multicultural organization, a work culture, an appropriately developed and supported work culture can trump national, ethnic, or other cultural differences, or can help design an organization to reduce or avoid cultural conflicts. So a strong work culture oftentimes can unite employees toward a common goal and to mask or avoid the cultural differences that otherwise might be felt by workers and managers in that organization. So in any event, think about the term of a work culture. And with that, that's the end of the textbook, at least as far as the formal lectures. I may post another lecture to introduce you to your final exam and project, but I certainly have enjoyed teaching you this semester, and sorry about the technical issues and some of the recordings, but hopefully we've gotten those all worked out now, and I wish you good luck in the future in your business or other careers, and I hope that if you have any questions as things go by, that you will feel free to get in contact with me. That's really been one of the most enjoyable things that I've done this semester, which is to have actual contact with students, even though we have an online course. So good luck, and please keep in touch. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.